My name is Evelyn. I'm 27 years old. And this is the story of the day my entire family forgot I existed on the one day I needed them the most. I still remember waking up that morning with this electric feeling in my chest. For years. For brutal, exhausting, soul-crushing years of balancing two part-time jobs, student loans, and a degree in business administration. All without a single dollar from my parents. I had done it completely on my own. And that morning, graduation day, I ironed my gown myself, pinned my cap in the mirror of my tiny apartment bathroom, and told my reflection, "You made it." I had saved 2 seats in the family section. 2 seats. One for mom, one for dad. That was all I asked for. I had texted them the week before with the time, the location, the parking details. Mom had replied with a simple, "Okay, honey." Dad had sent a thumbs up emoji. That was it. No excitement. No, "We're so proud of you." Just an okay and a thumbs up. But I told myself that was fine. They weren't expressive people. What mattered was that they would show up. They didn't show up. I sat in that auditorium surrounded by hundreds of families cheering, crying, waving signs with their kids' names on them. Balloons everywhere, flowers everywhere, cameras flashing. And when they called my name, Evelyn Marie Carter, I walked across that stage and looked out into the crowd at those 2 empty seats. And I smiled anyway, because I had worked too hard to let that moment collapse under the weight of their absence. I shook the dean's hand. I took my diploma. I walked back to my seat, and I held it together. It was after the ceremony that everything fell apart inside me. I pulled out my phone to call them, maybe hoping there had been some emergency, some misunderstanding, some reason that made sense. And that's when I saw the Instagram notification. My mother had posted photos. 40 minutes ago. While I was walking across that stage, my mother was posting smiling restaurant photos with a caption, "So proud of our son," celebrating Daniel's big promotion. My brother Daniel had gotten a promotion at his sales job.
À promotion.
My hands were shaking when I called her. She picked up on the second ring, and I could hear the noise of the restaurant behind her. Laughter, clinking glasses, background music. She was laughing at something someone said when she answered. "Oh, Evelyn." Like it was any ordinary Tuesday. Like she hadn't just missed the biggest day of my life. I asked her where they were. I already knew, but I asked anyway. And she said it so casually, so completely unbothered that for a second, I thought I had misheard her. She said, "Honey, we already have one success in the family. We didn't think you'd actually finish." She laughed a little when she said it. Not a cruel laugh, almost like she was surprised I was even calling about it, like my feelings were a minor inconvenience interrupting her evening. I hung up. I sat in my car in that parking lot for a long time. My graduation gown still on, diploma in my lap, and I made a decision sitting in that silence. I was done explaining my worth to people who had already decided what I was. I didn't cry. I was past crying. Something inside me shifted that afternoon. Something quiet and permanent, like a door closing softly, but locking forever. I drove home alone. I made myself dinner alone. And I started planning. Because 6 months later I would send them one photograph and everything would change. Those 6 months after graduation were the quietest and most focused period of my entire life.
I want to be honest about that.
They were not easy. There were nights I sat at my kitchen table at 2 in the morning staring at job rejection emails wondering if maybe they were right about me. That thought would creep in sometimes, slow and poisonous, whispering that maybe I really wasn't enough. But every single time it showed up, I remembered that parking lot. I remembered sitting in my graduation gown with my diploma in my lap and making that silent decision. And I would close the laptop, go to sleep, wake up, and start again. I had graduated with honors in business administration, but I didn't tell my family that. I never corrected my mother that night on the phone. I just let them keep their version of me. The one who probably wouldn't finish. The one who was always the background child. The quiet one who didn't quite measure up to Daniel's promotions and my parents' proud restaurant dinners. I let them keep that story because I was busy writing a completely different one. 3 weeks after graduation, I landed an entry-level analyst position at a mid-sized financial consulting firm downtown. It wasn't glamorous. I was making coffee runs and building spreadsheets and staying 2 hours late every evening learning things nobody asked me to learn.
But I was obsessive about it.
I studied the senior consultants. I asked questions that made some of them uncomfortable. I volunteered for the projects nobody wanted. And slowly, then suddenly, people started noticing. My manager noticed. Her manager noticed. By month 4, I was being included in client meetings. By month 5, I had independently drafted a cost restructuring proposal that saved one of our mid-level clients over $200,000 annually. The partners called me into a conference room on a Friday afternoon in month 6. I thought I had done something wrong. Instead, they slid a folder across the table. Inside was an offer letter. A junior partner track offer. Something that typically took people 3 to 5 years to reach. I was being offered it at 6 months. The salary figure on that paper made my eyes blur for a second. I signed it that same afternoon. That weekend, I got dressed up. Not for anyone else. For myself. I drove downtown to the gleaming glass office building where I now worked, where my name was already being added to an internal directory under a title I had earned completely alone. I stood in front of those glass doors in my best outfit, and I asked a stranger to take a photo of me. Just one photo. Me smiling, standing in front of that building.
No caption, no explanation.
I sent it to my parents in a family group chat that had been silent for 6 months. And I put my phone face down on the passenger seat. By the time I picked it up 40 minutes later, my mother had called 47 times. Not exaggerating. 47 missed calls in less than 1 hour. My father had called 11 times. Daniel, who had barely spoken to me in years, had sent 3 texts asking me to call them back immediately. When I finally called my mother, she wasn't laughing this time. She was crying. She had Googled the building. She had looked up the firm. She understood exactly what that photo meant. That her daughter, the one she didn't think would finish, had not only finished, but had already lapped everyone in the room. She kept saying she was sorry. She kept saying she didn't know. And I listened to every word quietly, the same way I had listened to her laugh on graduation day. When she finished, I said something I had rehearsed in my head for 6 months. I told her that I forgave her because carrying that anger was too heavy for the life I was building. But I also told her that forgiveness didn't mean things went back to the way they were. Trust is not a switch. Respect has to be consistent, not just switched on when someone becomes impressive enough to brag about. She went quiet after that. I think about that parking lot sometimes. That girl in the graduation gown sitting alone with her diploma. I don't feel sorry for her anymore. I feel grateful. Because the moment my family decided not to show up for me, I was forced to show up entirely for myself. And that turned out to be the most powerful thing that ever happened to me. You don't need a cheering section to build something real. You just need to keep going on the days when the seats are empty. Because those are exactly the days that define you.